I'd like to welcome everybody here. We are here, another episode of Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking. And I want to thank you all for taking the time to come back, sit back here, and join me and, enjoy another podcast. This is going to be the final one I do before the Christmas holidays. And this has been an interview that I've been trying to set up now probably for about a month. It's not easy to set up an interview with people that live in other time zones. That is one thing I'm learning the hard way when it comes to doing a podcast. And when you got people that live in different time zones and sometimes they're almost a day ahead of you, that it gets really confusing when you try to set it up. But I definitely am happy to have my guest on that I'm going to be introducing very shortly. And it's I heard this gentleman on another podcast and speaking about forensic forensic psychology. And I found it super interesting when I was hearing him talk about it. And that's one thing that I've always really enjoyed ever since I can remember is I really am fascinated by serial killers and what goes through their head and what makes them what they are. And so, when you see all those shows on TV where they're talking about, different serial killers, you got Manson, you got the Zodiac Killer. I find that all very interesting. And I think what I find interesting is, like I said, trying to figure out what goes through their minds and what makes these people blend so well into society and do the things that they do. That's probably the most scary thought to me, is that there's people that are walking around us every day that have the potential to do stuff like they do. And so I find the whole topic very fascinating. And so when I heard this gentleman speaking along the lines of this topic, I just had to get him on my show. I wanted to actually talk to him. He knows what he's talking about. He's got way more experience in this and teaches this and that, so he knows way more about it than I do. So I wanted to learn a little bit from him, get him on the show, and just get his thoughts on forensic psychology, what it is, break it down from what the words mean and how they go together. So that is definitely going to be a great topic. So let me go ahead and introduce my guest here. I want to bring him in. Hello, Russell. I want to welcome you to the Crypt. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and see me and chat with my group here. And, it's so close to Christmas, so I really want to thank you for taking the time to actually come and chat with me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the offer.
Oh, it's great. And as I was saying in my intro, I caught your another interview that you did. It was pretty much pertaining to the David Crowley case, and that's kind of where that's where your conversation lied. But you also got really deep into explaining what forensic psychology is and stuff like that, and that's when my ears perked up because I really found it interesting because you kind of started touching on serial killers and stuff like that. So can you kind of break down what forensic psychology is or what it isn't, or all the things, kind of walk us through what it is or what it isn't?
Okay. And I have come prepared for that.
I like people that are prepared, Russell. Amazing. I love people that are prepared.
I have to be prepared because I do not take this lightly. Okay. Now, there's a difference between psychology and forensic psychology. They're night and day. What it is and what it's not. Psychology generally is very therapeutic. It's client, patient based, and it seeks stability. It seeks to bring a person to have a more stable. Not forensic psychology is non-therapeutic. It's victim perpetrator based, and it has criminal justice applications, and then it seeks facts through evidence. And I want to make a very important distinction here. In forensic psychology, we do not seek the truth.
Okay.
The truth does not fare well in a court of law, because the truth, unfortunately, the truth has its own agenda. The truth can be bought, it can be sold, it can be manipulated. It depends on a person's personal point of view, how they perceive things. And so it brings a whole mess to the thing. But forensic psychology is based on evidence. evidence does, if it's interpreted correctly, that's the only caveat. Forensic psychology is based where it's on evidence. You let the evidence lead you, you don't lead the evidence. So it doesn't have, unlike psychology, it does not have its own agenda. It cannot be bought. It cannot be sold. It is not biased. It doesn't give a if you're Mexican, Somalian, whatever. It does not care if you're rich, poor, whatever. It is what it is. And that's why I like it so much, because it is what it is.
Right.
And so, you know, you either accept it or you don't, and it's going to tell you if you're guilty or if it's not, because it's the evidence that speaks.
Right, right. And if somebody wants to get into the field and look in, like I definitely, as I was saying with you earlier, I wanted to get into, like, talk about like different, like the mind of a serial killer and that. So if somebody wants to get into that field or into your field or whatever, what schooling do you need to do that? Like, what are your credentials? Like, what did you have to go to school for to get to where you are and stuff like that?
Okay. Right now, I hold a bachelor's in science in counseling psychology. I hold a master's in human sciences with the concentration in psychology. I have a postgraduate degree or diploma in forensic science.
Wow.
I did a 2-year internship, or it was a volunteer thing, with a criminal investigative department of the sheriff's of a sheriff's department in Maryland. I did 2 years for that. I've also private investigator.
Wow.
For Minnesota, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, Washington, D.C., and currently I am still a fugitive recovery agent, even though I don't go out to the field anymore. I just do everything computer-based now. So, and then I've 3 years taught university level at Washington Adventist University in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And I've taught forensic psychology and forensic anthropology.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a lot of credentials and sounds like a lot of schooling to do what you do.
Yes.
And yeah, that's amazing.
If you're going to go to school for this, you can look at 4 years for your undergrad, 2 years, maybe more for your master's. And then if you're going to go for your doctorate, it could be between 2 and 4 years. It depends on what you want to do. But generally in this field, unlike what TV, I wish people would just stop looking at TV altogether.
Well, that's the one thing that you did tell me when we were speaking through chat, is that you wanted to make clear up some misconceptions about what people see on TV and what goes on in real life. So by all means, go ahead, Russell, and take it away. Like, let people know what is real and what is not real.
Okay, here's the problem with serial killers. First of all, people have a wrong perception of what serial killers are.
Okay.
And now this picture I'm going to show you is an actual serial killer, but this is when they look at a serial killer, this is what they perceive.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Unfortunately, that's not the average look of your serial killer. This is what your average serial killer is going to look like.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's not the gross guy who's lurking in the corner in the dark.
Right.
It's your barber. It's your hair salon. It's the person sitting next to you in church on the pew. It's your neighbor. It could be your best friend. It's innocence. And this is what, and if you study about Ted Bundy, this is what endears them to people.
Right. You're very correct.
If you're some creepy guy like this, no, you're not going to. People are going to be naturally weary. But now, if you're faced with innocence, then you're going to be left off guard.
For sure.
And this is what serial killers do. And so it's the innocence, not just female. I just put this in here as an example of innocence.
Right. Okay.
And so, you got the babies innocent, you got models are innocent. In other words, serial killer doesn't have a certain look.
And that's what people think. That's what people think is that I would know a serial killer if I saw one and stuff like that. And you're saying that's not the case. These are people that are in your everyday life. They can be, as you said, your neighbor, could be anybody around you. And what scares me, Russell, is how they blend in so well. I think that's what fascinates me more about, like, when I look into it and want to research it, which I've always wondered what it kind of means for people like me that actually find this topic fascinating. What does that say about my psychology in a way? I've always wondered that too, because I do find this topic fascinating. And that's what I totally agree with what you say, is that people think that they can just point out a serial killer, and you're saying that's not the case at all.
No. And unfortunately, there's too many cases where you've had serial killers or mass murderers or someone in prison, and one thing you have to realize is, if you're going to be a regular psychiatrist or psychologist, and I just want to point out that we do need these type of people in our society. We need psychiatrists, we need psychologists, because there is a lot of people out there who do need help. But when you start using psychologists and psychiatrists in a prison setting to sit there and decide whether or not a person is well enough to be re-entered into society, and that person is a serial rapist, a serial killer, pedophile, I'm sorry. You should not be doing that. I mean, they're great for, if you want someone in prison to talk to discuss some of your issues, that's great. But when you're deciding whether or not this heinous person who did these heinous things should be re-entered back into society, no, you should not be using them, because the serial killer, the serial rapist, the pedophile will know your job better than you do.
Really? Okay, that's disturbing.
They can play you, and since long as I believe in the DSM-4, it's the DSM-4 is the diagnostic statistical manual for therapists, and that's great. But unfortunately, too many people in the field hold it up as a "thus saith the Lord," and I'm sorry, I will disagree with that. It's a great tool, it's a great guide, but it's not a "thus saith the Lord." And when you start using that as a "thus saith the Lord," and you're trying to figure out if this wacko guy, and that's unprofessional term, should be re-entered back in society, no, you shouldn't, because they know that thing.
Wow.
So you need to be trained. You need to specifically be trained in forensics to, and actually my field is more along the lines of investigative psychology. You
Right.
got to study people's behavior. You're not interested in, I'm sorry if this sounds cruel, but I don't care about your ups and downs. I don't care about your little mommy and daddy issues. That's why we have psychologists and psychiatrists to deal with that. I'm interested in your mind. I'm interested in what it is you think, why you think it, and how I can beat you to pass.
I see. Okay. Okay, I totally understand that, Russell. And so let's make a scenario here. Say if there was a serial killer out and you were trying to figure out who they were or what is making them do what they do. In your profession, what do you do to start that process? If somebody calls you in to start looking at something, at a case, like where would you start, and what would guide you? What would you start looking for? What are you trying to learn about this person to try to catch them or find out who they are?
I think first of all, you've got to keep a clear mind. You got to keep an open mind. You cannot go out with the intention of looking for any one specific thing, because if you do, you're going to get pigeonholed, you become narrow focused, and you're going to miss something. So you look for everything while not looking for nothing.
Okay.
So, and if I'm going to study about someone, he or she will be the last thing I'm going to look at. Okay. What I want to look at is I want to see where the offense or offenses have occurred.
Okay.
That's one of the places I want to see. I want to see the environment in which these events happened. I want to see what the environment looks like at the time these said events happened. You know, if it was nighttime, it was daytime, I would like to go and check that out. Then the next thing I want to see is I'm going to do what they call a geographical profiling. I want to see the whole entire area. I want to see what's next to this event, what kind of stores, what kind of churches, is it residential, is it business? And see all these things, you start getting to know about the killer without even looking at the killer yet.
Right. Right.
And then you want to look at then you're going to look at the victim, and you want to do what they call a psychological autopsy. You want to go into every little teeny facet of this person's life. What kind of mail they got, who wrote them, what their online life was like, social media, did they attend church, how were they perceived in church, and you want to know everything. And then you want to look at their friends. Did they go out and party a lot? Did they have risky behaviors? Did they drink a lot? Were they into drugs a lot? What kind of company they kept? What did their employers, the people that work at their job, what they thought of them? You want to know about all these things. And so by time you get to the offender, you'll know more about the offender, because then you're going to know what type of person that they may are very apt to go for. You'll know that whether or not they like to strike next to home, or whether they travel far away, or do they have a penchant for younger or older, all these things. And so when you finally go and you look at the perpetrator themselves, there's a very high probability that the perpetrator is going to align very closely to the places he committed the crimes, to the victims he's chosen, to the methods he's done. It's going to speak to his psychopathy. So it's a very intense and laborious process. But if you do that, and you do it, and you're very meticulous about it, then you have a very higher chance of, like I said, beating this guy to the past. Because the whole idea is not to outthink him or her. Because if you start out with the idea that I'm going to outthink them, you're not going to win. They will win. Wow. So the idea is to think like them. And if you can think like them, then you start to figure out all the things, all these different places. And if he's killed more than one person, he or she has killed more than one person, then you can guess, you make an educated guess of where they're going to strike next, what the victims are going to be, what the victims are going to look like, in the hours and all that stuff. And does it guarantee that you'll catch them? No, there's no guarantee. Anyone who believes that, I'm sorry, they're on a foolish errand. But your chance of catching them is dramatically increased if you know him, and if you think like him or her.
Right.
And so, and here's the thing where a lot of people, I'm a person who believes in God. Unfortunately, in forensics, my belief in God is inconsequential.
Right.
You can't allow God. You can't allow my dislike of people or fashion or foods or any of that, because it doesn't matter. In the long run, it absolutely has nothing to do with what you're studying. So you have to find out you got to put all your personal feelings aside. They don't exist. And you have to start putting your mind into the mind of this individual. And it's very laborious. And I would recommend anyone who sets out on this path to make sure they have their own therapist.
Okay.
Because I'm sorry, none of us are Superman, none of us are Wonder Women. We just aren't. That's just like
the mind was right. And that's the thing, Russell. Sorry to cut you off, but I just want to get this in.
No, it's okay.
I'd never looked at it. Like, I look at all these cases of like Ted Bundy and all of that, and all the different serial killers, you name them. And I've always kind of wondered that in a way of what people that like you that investigate these cases and that work these cases. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it must put a lot of pressure and on the person like you that's investigating it. Like when you start digging into these people and the evidence of a case and looking into stuff, it must take a toll on you, the investigator. And I don't think a lot of people talk about that. They're always interested in all of the, highlights of the case and the killer himself. But what about the investigators that are going through this and seeing this? Like, that's a great point that you bring up, Russell.
Yeah, because the mind was never meant to have this type of, the mind was never meant for this, especially for prolonged periods of time. It just wasn't. At some point, if you do not talk about what it is you see, about what it is you're experiencing, about your job with someone who can keep their lips shut,
right?
There's a very high chance that you could end up being like the person that you're trying to catch.
Really?
Because the mind's not meant to sustain that type of thought. What am I trying to say? It's not made for that. It's just no. Us as humans, a lot of people will say humans are basically evil. I would say humans are not basically good, but I don't think they were basically evil. I think we have a choice.
Right.
We choose to be good. We choose to be evil. Now, if you're constantly in an evil light, and if you don't see the light at some point, then what tends to become your focus?
Right. The dark.
It is the darkness.
It is the dark. Right. And if you're always surrounded around it and you're always exposed to it, it only makes sense that that's going to end. It's got to eventually take a toll on you and start creeping in. If that's all you, and again, you're not getting help or talking to somebody about it, that just makes sense.
And if you're going to go into this field, one of the things I do recommend, and this is my recommendation, is that, I don't know, you can read this, but you should read complete works of Sun Tzu.
Okay.
This guy, he was a military strategist, arguably the most brilliant military strategist that has ever lived in recorded history. This guy, when it comes to studying people, when it comes to studying behavior, especially of the enemy, there's no psychologist, no one in the world that can outdo this guy.
Okay. I've heard that before.
So it's like he states, if your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him, pretend to be weak, that he may grow arrogant. I mean, if you want to study about human behavior, you actually want to go into investigative psychology, and you really want to dance with the devil, so to speak, read Sun Tzu.
Okay. I've heard that from so many people that that you have to read that, and I definitely gotta have to do that, because I've heard this from more than just you. Now I've heard that from a lot of people, and so you're saying if you read that, that's going to give you a great understanding of what
of human behavior. And what it does is it gives you an insight. It doesn't make you clairvoyant. You're not going to have some magical mystical powers, but it does give you a better insight into human behavior. And so this way you will be able to predict better what a certain group or a certain individual will or will not do given a specific situation.
Okay.
And if you can do that, and the whole idea is to, for me, the whole idea is to beat them to the pass.
Makes sense.
Get there before they do. So that way you can stop them before they can continue their carnage.
Nope, that makes total sense. And if you can study that and learn that to get ahead of the curve, as you say, is a great way to look at it. Now, the question I've always wondered, and I'm sorry if my questions, some of them probably are very for you, probably stuff you hear all the time, but I'm learning this, so I find it fascinating. And I've always wondered, and this may sound like a funny question to you, but I'll ask it because I just want to know: are serial killers born, or are they created from their life, their environment, or are they born this way?
First of all, that gets into regular psychology, and my line of field, I really don't give it a lot of credence. Okay, in nurture or whatever, environment, nature or nurture, blah 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 blah. I mean, it's great for those who are in that line of field. That's great. But I would say that every person that is born, without exception, has the propensity to become a serial killer, to become a serial rapist. Unfortunately, this is where a belief in God would come in. If you believe in that sort of thing. But because we were born and we have are in a sinful nature, and because of that sinful nature, you cannot rule out the propensity to become something. Right. Now, does that mean that you have to become that? No. After that point, yes, I would have to say the very fact that we all have the same chance to become this. Okay. Now, this is where environment does play a key important part. If first of all, we're all at a disadvantage. Okay, that's the bottom line. And there is no way to get around that. I don't care. You can have your happy snowflake, right, left, liberal, whatever type of mentality. I'm sorry. The truth is we can't escape that. Everyone is equal in that respect. Now, what makes a person become a serial killer or a serial rapist, I would say, since we're all starting at the gate, all equal, right? What makes the difference, I have to say, is environment. And environment is I believe, a huge factor. If you have someone who has a very passive father, who has a very domineering mother, who is always bullied at school, and when he or she is complains about it, their feelings or their complaints are not validated, and then with not a very good lifestyle at home, maybe they're not accepted that great in church. There's a lot of different factors that keep piling on. And I think this can have an adverse effect on a person's psyche. It has a very bad effect. Now, there's only one exception, and that's your sociopaths and your narcissists. I would have to say that, like all people, you have the propensity to become a sociopath. You have the propensity to become a narcissist. Right. Now, once again, environment plays, I believe environment plays a critical role here. Is in the very beginning, I mean, from the time the child is born, if the child is doing something, and especially if it's wrong, and you laugh at it, You think it's a joke. But you never ever reinforce your child, hey, you know what? This is wrong though.
Right.
What you're feeling is wrong. And if they're mean to cats and you say, oh, Tommy, don't do that. No, then if you combine that with the bullying, and then the moment you start seeing the child start, I'm better than you, or oh, look at my clothes, they're better. If you don't stop that, if you keep reinforcing that, it could be, because I really like to stay away from definitives, but it could be where the person, the child, starts to believe they are invincible.
Right.
The whole world does revolve around me. And when they start to believe that, it's like it's been said, generally, a person is pretty much pliable, and your character is not set until around the age of 7.
Okay.
Once that character is set, it's going to be there with him or her for the rest of their life. So can they mold the character if it's a little off? Can they tweak it? Can they, try to do something better? Yes, if the environment is changed. But if that environment is not changed and chaos is still reigning, you're in the big world of trouble.
Right. And this is a great point, Russell, that I want, like, now that you're talking about this, because this is something I've also taken interest in and wondering, only because I'm online. So I'm just follow me where I go with this. But what are your thoughts on how the internet and social media are can they affect? Because I notice, and the reason I'm asking this is that I notice a lot of people that have children are letting, and for no better way of describing it, letting the internet raise their children. And I'm saying that because you see a lot of kids from a very young age, they're online, they got phones at such a young age. I see children that are so young and they're carrying around phones and tablets and they're online and in social media. And I have to think, and I want your thoughts on this, that definitely can have a negative effect, correct? Like all of this that's going on online, it just seems that this is a time bomb waiting to go off. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that, if you kind of know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I do. And I follow you. I in this age of technology, because when I was a kid, if you wanted to play, you went outside.
Exactly.
You played in the mud. You played in the grass. You played with your friends. You rode your bike up and down the street. You did dumb things like trying to jump over a box or something like that on your bike. But you enjoyed life. I got to watch television maybe 1 hour a week on Saturday morning to watch cartoons.
Exactly.
That was it.
Yep, same as me.
And then I had to go outside and play. I think that with technology allows us to become more closer and closer together. But the closer together technology brings us, the further apart we are from each other.
I totally agree.
I personally believe that no child should have a phone until they get into high school.
Mm-hmm.
And they should have a phone that is for either academic uses or emergency phone call use. You give them a plan that has enough minutes that if they choose to waste it, that's their problem.
Right. Yep.
Okay. But to give a child a phone or a tablet or something at such a young age, no, you don't let technology teach your children. And one of the things, that's a parent's job.
Right.
Okay. One of the things, I think one of the biggest things, I think technology.
You might as well just message him now, let him know that, he's back again. Can you hear me, Russell?
Yeah, my computer I have this,
no worries.
Anything anything Chinese. It's a Chinese thing.
No worries. I'm glad I stayed online. I just kind of sat here chatting with my, just letting people know that I was enjoying this interview with you and stuff like that. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't hang up because I was hoping you would come back on here. So I'm so glad that I didn't hang up from the call. And
Okay. Okay. So if we get cut off again, there is something I would like to cover.
Okay, you go right ahead. Take the floor, Russell.
Okay. Now there is a difference. There's a difference between a psychopath and a sociopath.
Okay, perfect.
And unfortunately, TV does not really tell you those things here. And I'm going to give you two examples of two people that if you want to know the difference between them, these are the two people that you should study. Let me see here. Oh, where is he?
Just take your time, Russell. I'm here. I'm enjoying this conversation so much.
Okay, here's psychopath, 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 psychopath. This is psychotic. And you're sociopath. Here we go. The sociopath. Okay. Now there's a difference. There's a difference between a psychopath and a sociopath. A psychopath generally has a medical issue.
Okay.
Okay. A sociopath, there's no medical issue that can account for why they're doing what they're doing. Where a psychopath, there's generally some type of medical abnormality, something that will account for why they're doing what they're doing.
Okay. That's very important to know that, actually. Like, that's something that they don't talk about very often, the difference in at least the stuff I watch.
Here's the prime example of a sociopath.
Okay, we all know him. Yep.
Oh, yeah. He's charming. He's narcissistic. He knows the difference between right and wrong. He knows what he's doing is wrong, but he really doesn't give it,
Yep.
And so he's a sociopath. Now, these two people are the best examples of how this is a psychopath.
Okay.
Ed Gain.
Ed Gain's right.
Now, if you want to study the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath, I would have to say these are your two best.
Okay, Ted Bundy and Ed Gaines.
Yeah, if you want to study the difference between them, then study their lives.
And that's right.
And then you will see the difference. This guy here did not know what he was doing. He was found mentally incompetent to stand trial. He was not competent to stand trial, excuse me. He was found incompetent to stand trial. He lived his whole entire life in a mental asylum, and that's where he died. Okay. He didn't go to prison because he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And anytime you walk into this man's barn and you find the lady who owned the shop in town dressed up like a deer.
Wow.
Inside this guy's barn with her head missing and cut open and everything. And then when you go to inside his house, my God, the lamp fixtures, the lampshades were all made out of human skin.
I heard that, yes. Wow.
The cereal bowls were skulls. I mean, everything. This is a psychopath. Okay?
Okay.
That's a psychopath. Now, this guy here is a sociopath. He believes the world revolves around him. He's very well aware of what is right, what is wrong, but the difference is he believes that it's wrong for you, not for him.
Okay, I see. And do they also think, somebody like Ted Bundy, that they will never get caught, that they're too smart to get caught, or do they know, do you think?
I think that the true sociopath doesn't care.
Really? Okay.
They don't care. Now, you can have your psychotic people. And here, if you want to know about psychotic people, here's one of the best ones you could possibly ever study on. This guy, it was during the time when there was still a Soviet Union. And at that time, the Soviet Union did not want to admit to the fact that they had serial killers.
Okay.
And this guy, wow. His name is Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo. And I'm sorry if I butchered that.
Right.
My Russian's not as good as it should be, even though I do know a little. And he was called the Butcher Rostov. And he would be a rapist. He'd go out and kill people, but then he would also eat them.
Wow.
So
that's, yeah, I've never heard of that one. That's one I'm going to have to look into. Wow.
That was one of the things. And then what makes me kind of upset, and then you have Albert Fish.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And this guy, he was a cannibal. He would eat little children.
Jeez.
Okay. Now, you could say, was he wasn't a sociopath. He's a psychopath. But yet, he had psychopathic traits. That's the big caveat there. You can have psychopathic or narcissistic traits and still be totally competent of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and knowing that it's wrong.
Makes sense. Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So,
and what are your thoughts? Do you think that most serial killers, and this is probably kind of hard to answer, but do they fit more into one category out of those two than the others, or is it pretty much it's a variety?
Okay. To answer that question, I will go to the different types of female serial killers.
Okay.
Okay. And I have my cheat sheet. This is all my stuff that I use for my class.
This is amazing, Russell. It's amazing.
With female killers, generally they do fit in one of these categories. One of the most pronounced ones are what we call angels of death. And they're going to be found in the medical profession.
Okay, yeah, I heard of that.
They're going to be nurses or whatever, and somehow they feel that they're saving you and that they're saving you from agony or death, or they like to try to kill you, watch everyone swarm in, try to save you, and then if they die, oh man, he died.
Right.
You know?
Right. And I've seen documentaries on nurses and that do this. So you're absolutely correct.
They're called angels of death.
Right.
Then your other ones are called black widows. And if you know anything about the spider, one is very lethal.
Right. And
then the other thing that you have to know about a black widow is generally after mating, they will kill their mate.
Right. Exactly.
Okay? And hence the term black widows. Those women that kill their husbands. And they kill them generally for financial gain or to feel, to get sympathy or to get, be recognized or whatever. But generally it's for financial gain. Then you have those that are like this one here, Belgenis.
Okay, yep.
Who suffers from a psychopathy or paranoid delusional disorders, rage or betrayal, which is this woman here. The sympathy seeking would fit in with those that are black widows. Then you have those that are narcissistic, actions motivated by personal gains. Now that is so, and you basically have the same types for men, whereas where men generally are very vicious and brutal when it comes to killing. Women are very subtle. They're not it's not saying that there is none out there that won't take a tomahawk to your head. Okay. But generally, they like poisoning, burning you to death, that sort of thing.
Wow.
And out of all the female killers so far in history, the only one that I have found, and I have studied them all the way back until maybe the 11th century.
Really?
Is Gelbenis.
Okay, that is one I've not heard of, Russell. I'm going to have to look into her. I have not heard of her.
She is the only one that was never caught.
Okay.
The only one. And her name was Brynau Pulstatter Storage. She was born in Norway.
Wow, yeah.
And there's not a real for sure date on her death. She had 20 plus victims. And she never, and her method of killing was strychnine poisoning, beheading, and burning you to death.
Wow. So she's definitely an exception. Oh, to her chill. Okay, wow. So she's definitely an exception to most females being that brutal.
I would say yes, she is. That's why you cannot pigeonhole serial killers. I mean, if I was to say anything, and I wish people would pay attention to this point, then all the other things I said, I would say, please don't pigeonhole. Don't sit there and say, oh, this is what I'm looking for, and you miss it.
Right.
And you miss it.
You miss it. And how many crimes do get missed and stuff because people do pigeonhole or get that tunnel vision, right? Like you can't, like that's what I'm getting from what you're saying is that if you want to do the investigating like you do, you can't have blinders on or tunnel vision. You have to look at, there's a great big picture that has to be looked at, not just,
And that's why in this case only, I have to put my belief in God aside.
Mm-hmm.
Because I cannot allow anything to interfere. Because you got to let the evidence lead you. You don't lead the evidence. And as long as you have something that you're going to be narrow-minded about, you're going to pigeonhole, are you going to say, oh, no, that can't be possible. I cannot believe that. I'm sorry. And what also the other thing that makes me upset is that, especially on TV, when they're going to say, oh, the very first, Sornos, they would say, oh, she was the very first woman serial killer ever, blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry. She is far from being the very first serial killer in the United States.
Right.
So far. Because you got Jane Toppin, who was an angel of death, who liked to poison people.
I'm noticing that with the more women you talk about, they're really into the poisoning, right? Is that because it's a less messy, more?
I don't know what it is, but it's with the exceptions. There's the exception to the rule.
There's always the exception.
They generally like to stick with burning and poisoning. That poison is their number one thing.
I find it interesting. I really do. I wonder why that is.
If you want to look at the most notorious female serial killer in all of known history, and it has nothing to do with anything American, it is a royalty, and it's Elizabeth Bathory.
I know about, yes. She's the one that bathed in people's blood and all of that, correct?
Yeah, she believed she was a little out there. Once again, that's unprofessional.
It's true, though.
But
it's true.
She believed that when blood had dropped on her hand, and she perceived that her hand got younger.
Right.
So she got it in her mind that she's going to take the poor girls, the peasant girls of the town, and she was a member of the royalty, the upper class, and she would go and she would get these girls, she would hang them up, bite off their nipples,
wow,
and bite them until they bled, and then she would suck their blood, and then she would hang them way up high, and she would sit in a bathtub, and these girls would be in a cage, and they would bleed to death, and the blood would come dripping down into the bathtub.
Wow.
And for those girls that did not fancy that type of abuse, she would take them naked in the middle of the winter, throw them outside the castle, and then dump water on them.
Jeez.
And so they froze. And so they estimate that her death count is actually unknown, but they're looking at maybe it's been over 600.
Wow. That is an insane number. Oh my, I was not expecting that, Russell.
Yeah, she would take them and dump them over the back wall of the castle.
Wow. That's that.
And
so she's definitely probably the worst of them all, right? That is.
I would have to say, I would, in my experience, I would have to say, I cannot find one that can even come close.
Exactly. Yeah, I've never heard of one either. Like, that's
and how she got caught was it proves that yes, she was a little out there, but she knew right from wrong.
Right.
So this proves how she got caught, proves that she was 100% in charge of her faculties, that she wasn't a psychopath, that she was a narcissistic sociopath, right, who was an elitist, who believed in that she was self-entitled and that she could do no wrong. And this is what caused her to get caught in the end. She got lazy and she chose a girl of noble birth.
Okay. That's what I heard.
A nobility.
Mm-hmm.
And when nobility, see, the average, and not to make the missing girls, I'm not trying to make light of that, but every girl that is missing is important. But if you're a nobody, you're not going to be missed.
Right. I know what you mean.
That's reality.
Yeah.
I think it's still a crime, but it's reality. But if you're a noble birth, you're going to be missed.
Right.
And they saw the noble girl had gone into the castle and she never came out. And so they found her body.
Okay. So that was the one mistake that Elizabeth made, was she got, as you said, lazy.
Yes, that was the one that caught her. And I think I would dare to say that the royalty probably had an inkling of what's going on, because in those times, it's very hard to hide that sort of thing.
Exactly. Somebody had to know. Suspect, at minimum suspect. Like, you can't have that many bodies and not notice.
Yeah, but it was the lower class, and she stuck with the lower class, the nobodies, the people that are ghosts that just were the flies on the wall, you know?
Yep. And now that you say that, what is really amazing is, as soon as you said that they were going after lower class or the lower class of society, my mind automatically jumps to Jack the Ripper. He was doing the same thing, right? Prostitutes.
Yes.
People that wouldn't be missed or not cared, not missed, but not cared for if they were. So what are your thoughts on that? Like the Jack the Ripper, what is your, I'm sure you've looked into him a bit. What is your thoughts?
I have, and I've read most of the books that have been written about him.
Me too.
I would have to say a lot of it is great speculation. Unfortunately, I don't read it for anything educational. Right. I read it for entertainment only. So I only read that stuff for entertainment, not to take totally serious, because I do not believe there's enough evidence that is incontrovertible. In other words, there is no loopholes.
Right.
There is not enough evidence to point to any one individual. But what I would have to say is that wasn't a stupid individual.
Right. I agree.
It wasn't a member of the lower caste. And if he was, then he was one damn good butcher.
For sure. And that's the thing. I
Um,
agree with you that when you say there's not enough evidence, like there's a lot of speculation and a lot of people that think they know who did it, but when you boil it all down, there's no evidence to back any of it up. Like it's just like you said,
no,
it's all just guessing, basically.
and and I would have to say there is there is a male counterpart to her.
Really, I want to hear about him.
Oh, oh yeah, male counterpart. See, I'm prepared.
This is amazing, Russell.
He's called Vlad the Impaler.
Dracula, everybody, that exactly. Vlad the
And
Impaler.
Dracula means is the son of.
Right.
Okay, so his father is Dracul.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was formerly known as Valid II Dracul. And so his father is Valid II Dracul. And so his name was also Dracula, which means the son of Dracul. And what he did, he had a big religious thing, and he didn't like Muslims. And so when the Ottoman Empire was in full swing, they kept trying to come and raid his place in Transylvania, and he was born in Bucharest and Wallachia. I'm sorry about the pronunciation once again. You know, so
it's yeah, it's a hard one to pronounce. I agree.
so, but what happened there is that he wasn't Islamic, and so when the Islamic people came, he wanted them to take off their turbans. They refused to take off their turbans. So what he did is he had their turbans nailed to their heads.
Wow.
Okay. And then the other stuff, it's more from what TV and stuff tells you, they really downplay it a lot.
That's
what he did.
That's frightening because it's bad enough from what they say. So if they're downplaying it, that's disturbing.
Yes, they are. And what he would do is he would take them and he would strip these guys naked, and he would take roughly a pole about this big around, and it was sharpened to a point.
Right.
And he would stick it up the rectum.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he would do it, he'd follow along so it wouldn't destroy none of the arteries or anything.
Right.
And it'd come up out of your mouth. And it would take a couple days sometimes for you to die.
He wanted the maximum amount of suffering for you to go through.
Yeah, and it's so
wow.
If you look at what he did, Bathroy and this guy, just studying them alone, you need a friggin' therapist.
I agree. I totally agree with that. That's incredible. So, and then, like, I never thought of that. I don't know why I don't think about people like back like that. I don't know if it's history or why I never thought of them as serial killers. I don't know. I've honestly don't know why I never thought of Vlad. Maybe because of all the vampire stuff and that, I guess maybe you don't look at it. But he was definitely, in your opinion, a serial killer, correct?
Yes. If you can kill the amount of people he did, and it wasn't mass murder. Mass murder that's one of the things, is a serial killer generally has 3 people, and there's always generally there's a cooling off period. Right. And then you go, and they almost never, ever do they ever. It's the saying, you don't shit in your backyard.
Right.
Okay. So they don't do that. But then you have spree killers who go out and they can shoot up a bank, or they can go into a mall and shoot up a mall and stuff like that. And that's a spree killer. Bonnie and Clyde is the most perfect example of a spree killer. Then you have mass murderers: Hitler, Stalin, Mao Zedong, Pop Paul, Idi Amin Dada. Then you have mass murderers. So that's a mass murder. So you have that. But if you're going to study in any study about investigative psychology or behavior, you really have to include this wonderful, cute couple.
They are a cute couple, to be honest. Yep.
These are what they call of Ian Brady and Mira Henley. They're responsible for what has been known as the Moors murders.
Okay, I've heard something about these. I haven't studied them, but I've heard about them.
If you're gonna and if you're coming into my line of field and you don't study about these guys, then there's something's wrong. And what they did is basically they would get young girls, they would rape them, they would kill them, they would kill boys. And the sickening thing is that he lured her sister so he could rape and kill her.
Wow. Is that a common is that a common thing for serial killers to get together like that? Like, do they kind of find each other,
no.
or does one convert one into one? Is there an unwilling one?
No. See, this is like the exception to the rule.
Okay.
Generally, serial killers are like lone wolves.
Right.
Then you will have certain serial killers that will play off each other. You'll have that, but it's very unlikely to have
like two that kind of meet up and I don't know, get along or something. I'm not sure how to word it.
No, I understand what you're saying because there is one. Believe it or not.
Wow, there's examples of all of them.
There is a group of guys. There's two guys that actually did, and I know I had not Jeffrey, not him. I have so much stuff here.
Yeah, take your time, Russell. This is so fascinating, and I really appreciate you for talking with me and speaking to everybody about this because it's a amazing
I think
topic.
it's him. Well, I don't know if it was Otis Elwood O'Toole or there was someone. I got to look that up again, but because there's so many in my head.
Oh, I can imagine. Like, yeah, when you start looking into serial killers, that's another thing that I found disturbing is there's a lot of them. Like, it's really crazy when you start looking into it. I always, you hear about Ted Bundy and you hear about Manson, stuff like that.
John Wayne Gacy,
Zodiac. But then there's a lot that are not as well known, but they're not as big profile, I guess. That's probably the word I'm looking for. But
at any one time, there's been estimated at least 100 active serial killers.
That's so frightening, Russell. That's so frightening.
And if you want to study about this, one of the most recent ones, you should look it up. They don't know who it is yet. And I've been taking an interest in this, and I've just recently started studying, trying to look into this. It's a highway serial killer, and he's out of British Columbia, Canada.
Right, I've heard of this.
And there's a certain highway, and he would take nothing but indigenous girls,
right,
Native American girls. And so I'm looking at either there's someone who's going against the norm, more than one serial killer. There's one, or it's a single serial killer, but he's using the highway. He's a trucker or something like that, and he's going back and forth. And the other thing that I have to look at is there's some Texas chainsaw type massacre weirdos living out there in the woods, and they're taking them.
Really? So that's where you're kind of thinking it's leading you as you look at it now.
Yeah, I think it's either someone who's using the highway system, or it's the idea that two are working in tandem is almost unheard of.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
I don't discount it. I don't discount it, but I still don't give it a lot of credence.
Right.
What I'm looking at what I think if it's not a trucker, then what I'm looking at, probably from what I have read, is you got some wackos who are living out there in the mountains.
Right. And they know the area very, very well. And
the fact that they're only taking indigenous women,
that means something, doesn't it? A hatred towards them, or somebody that was wronged by them. That
it could. You don't ever want to use, and this is where I'm very careful. You never want to use definitives, because you use definitives, people can always come back and bite you in the butt.
Okay.
So never, especially in this field, you never use definitives. If the evidence doesn't point that way, then you cannot use a "thus saith the Lord." But if they're just taking indigenous people, it could mean that they dislike their meat. It sounds gross,
right?
But it could be that. It could be a penchant for indigenous women meat, or indigenous women servitude, or something, slaves. It could mean that they have an inferiority complex, that at some point are low self-esteem, and at some point someone did something to make fun of them, and finally they went over the edge and they couldn't take it no more, or they were just raised that way.
Right.
Because if you have people like the Texas Chainsaw type people living out there in the woods, and you're raised that way, you do not have no inkling of what's right and what's wrong.
Exactly.
This is what you do. You're hunting.
And they're just hunting people. To them, it's as normal as every day for them, kind of thing. Like, it's.
I mean, if you were a person who liked to go for elk, but you saw a deer, you wouldn't shoot it because you want to shoot elk.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you wouldn't shoot an elk if you were out hunting for black bear.
Right.
Even though a big, huge elk comes in with a huge rack and everything. No, you wouldn't, because he's not black bear.
Right.
I think this could also explain, I said could explain why they're choosing indigenous women. And I don't mean no offense by correlating them to an animal.
Right.
It's just trying to get across.
No, I think everybody listening will definitely understand what you're trying to say, and so definitely I kept you a long time, Russell. So I don't want to I'm going to let you go shortly and end this interview, because you've been more than patient in explaining everything, and
I'm happy with this.
Oh, me too. I'm enjoying this greatly, and I appreciate the time you've taken, and especially where you are. It's actually the 24th, so it's almost Christmas there, and you're taking time out of to come and chat with me, and I appreciate it so much. But I have to ask, because how I first learned about heard your interview was through the David Crowley case, which I heard you commenting on. So I have to ask, because a lot of people that listen to me are very up on the David Crowley case, and I know you know a little bit about it. And so, what are your thoughts? And you can just whatever you want to say about it, it's totally up to you. What are your thoughts on the David Crowley case? What do you see in the? I'm just curious in general what you think about the Crowley case. That's the best way I can ask the question.
From what the evidence is pointing to,
okay,
from what the evidence is showing, is that it's not a suicide.
Okay.
I'm sorry for those people who want to see that, but the evidence does not point towards that.
What do you see? What does the evidence show?
What I see is someone who tried to. It's staging a scene.
Right. That's what I think, to be honest.
I think someone tried to. And here's the thing: anytime you try to stage a scene, you're going to get caught.
Right.
The old adage, less is more, really is applicable to here. Okay. The more you try to make it look like something, the more it looks like you try to make it look like something.
Right.
And one of the biggest blunders in the David Crowley case, I mean, the biggest blunders, in the David Koala case. And I don't think enough people have paid it enough attention, was the Quran.
Right. I heard you say that. Yep.
And if you're a person who has any knowledge,
come on, don't. No, not again. We're gonna give it a couple seconds here, Russell. I am not hanging up until we finish this. So definitely, I will wait for you to come back. I'm sorry, guys. As I said, the connection for him can sometimes get a little bit dicey. So I'm going to wait like I did the last time, because I think this is definitely a great spot to end it on, is on the Crowley case. So I'm just going to wait for to see if he comes back on. If you can hear me, Russell, I'm going to wait here for a few minutes, and I'll just babble to people. You know, not that they want to, you know, I can't say it any better than you're doing it. So he's all right. So we're going to go back here. There we go. And I'm going to keep it on my other monitor here and see if Russell actually connects back up here with me again. And so we can end this. I think it's a great way to end this show, is to talk about the Crowley case, because, you know, it's one of the first interview. It is the first interview I did on this channel. And so I'd be reminiscent if I didn't ask. So we're going to see if he comes back on. Let's give him 5 minutes or so. And we'll see if he can actually click back on here before I end the meeting, because I don't want to do that. I want to thank him again so much for taking the time to come and talk to me about this, especially, you know, so close to the holidays and that. And as I was saying at the beginning, it's taken a while to set this meeting up just because of the big time difference. And so it's taken a while to hook it up, but we got it done tonight. And I think we're learning a lot of amazing stuff. And I find it very interesting what he's saying. And just my mind's going in 100 different directions right now, and I'll probably have 100 questions for him again when I hang up with him. That's always happens with me in an interview. You know, I'll get off the interview and I'm like, why didn't I ask that question? Why didn't I ask this question? And I think that happens to a lot of people that interview people. So, you know, what do you do in that case? You get them back on for a second interview, and then you remember to ask them the questions that you want. But I am hoping that Russell can join us again. I'm hoping that his internet's going to come back, because I really want to thank him personally, you know, on air here, and thank him for this, because the knowledge that he's sharing with us is amazing. And he does come prepared. I'll give him that. He's got pictures and to show us and stuff like that. And it's really cool how he, at the beginning, when he opened up with how people think, their image of their mind in their mind of what a serial killer is, and then he shows you pictures of, you know, everyday people, and then he's like, no, this is what your serial killers are like, this is what a lot of them look like. And that really is it's a powerful thing to do that. Oh, is he coming back here? Let's see. There he is.
Okay, sorry once again.
Not a problem. I waited for you this time. I'm ready for you.
Yeah, it's the stupid internet.
Not a problem. I understood that. You did tell me that when we were chatting that your internet can go in and out a bit. So I just waited for you. And so, yeah, where we continue on the Crowley case.
So what I said is their biggest blunder is the Quran.
Right.
I have a Quran. First of all, no one who actually believes in the Quran or actually has any faith in Allah would never use the Quran. And then to open it up, regardless of where it looks like it's open to, the fact is the Quran pages have been torn out. It's been laid on the floor. An infidel's hand was placed on top of it.
Right.
That is staged. That's someone who's doing it thinking that they can invoke a certain type of emotion. And then to sit there and say that they wrote and pig, see, that's all, it's overdue. It's overdone.
Right. And I've had a lot of people say that it's just so much. It's like they threw everything at it in the kitchen sink, like just to make it so they just did everything. They wanted blood here, blood on the wall. And it's really strange. Strange.
And the second biggest blunder I've seen with that case is with the medical examiner.
Right.
You do not go into a crime scene 5 or 6 hours after it's been reported, and you're only there for an hour, hour 40. I mean, excuse me.
Right.
Triple homicide, it should take at least a couple days if it's done correctly.
Right.
For her to go in and say, no. If that does not smell to high heaven, I don't know what does.
Right. So you're saying it should have
like
45 minutes is too quick to go in and for a medical examiner to go in there and just.
It's a joke.
Right.
It's a joke. It's a matter of fact, it's so disgusting. It's not even laughable.
Right.
So, but one of the things I would like to touch on, this also deals with why I look at the Crawley case the way I do.
Okay, perfect.
Is you got in forensic, you have forensic principles. One of the forensic principles is what we call Locard's exchange principle, and that means every contact leaves a trace. If you have a case and no one has ever walked into that case, that means everything's what we call in situ. Okay, it's the way it is. The Locard, he was a French criminalist, by the way. Vive la France. He was a French criminalist, and he postulated that once you go into a crime scene, once you walk into a crime scene, that crime scene is forever changed. It can never go back to the way it was.
Exactly. Right.
And this is one of the biggest blunders that they made in this case, is whoever didn't consider Locard's exchange principle. Less is more, people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I've always said that, Russell, about that case. That's what I've looked into this case, and I've read all the evidence for myself because I've had people tell me to look at it myself. And that's the one thing that I've always thought too, was that it looks staged and overdone. That's just the way I feel about it. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I don't know what happened in that house. I don't know David from anyone else. I never met the man, but I'm just saying from what the evidence I've looked at, they threw everything at it. And I always wondered about the Quran too, that seemed very out of place for me for some reason. And that's,
I mean, if the Islamic population at large actually knew about that, you'd have an uproar like you would not believe. Really? But I think that's downplayed. Because you know, there was a guy in Germany. He wrote a cartoon, and in this cartoon he added the depiction of Muhammad. They went off the handle.
Wow.
And they had that thing removed. The cartoon got to be aired, but the depiction of Muhammad was removed. Right. Now, if they're going to act that way over a character, what do you think the reaction will be if someone used the Quran the way they did?
Right.
And the fact that we haven't heard anything about that.
Wake
up, people.
Yeah, it's true.
Wake up.
You never hear anything about that. They kind of just glossed over that whole thing, and I just find that very strange, and the writing on the wall and stuff like that. It was just I agree with you. To me, it's staged. Now, whether it was staged by David or someone else, people can have their own opinion, but it was definitely
if
staged.
You look at the crime scene, the story it is telling you, the thing that people got to learn is that there's two things: a crime scene and bones. They have something to say, and it's called a story. Mm-hmm. And if you're willing to listen, they will tell you a wonderful story, an accurate story, a story that's going to be based upon the evidence, not based upon what you want it to be. And if you can listen to what it's saying, it will tell you the where, the how, the who, the when, the what. It's screaming at you.
Right.
And people know they have to let their own personal opinions, their own personal narratives, their own personal agendas, their everything has to get involved. And then you have people going there stomping around which do not belong in a crime scene, and you compromise it to death like this one was.
Exactly.
And they still are so blinded to think, oh, he's guilty. I'm sorry, look at the crime scene.
Right.
Now, and the fact that his daughter's arm is pulled, I'm sorry. No, right. The whole thing was staged.
No, I've that's what I've thought too. To be honest, and like I said, I don't know whether it was staged by David or whoever did it. If there's other perpetrators, that's everyone. They can have their own do their own research, and you figure it out for yourself. But I've always said that it's definitely was staged. You know, greatly.
And what I hear, a lot of these people who are weighing in on this, they need to study what we call the Frey rule and also the Dubert rule.
Okay, and what are those?
And the Frey rule calls into question whether or not the field in which the expert is testifying is generally accepted by a considerable proportion of its scientific community. These people go in their armchair, sea lawyers, barracks lawyers, you know, and they start believing these people who have not been adjudicated, or who have not been feted by a constituency of their peers.
Right.
They haven't. Oh, this person, he sounds smart. So no, the Frey rule says no. Okay. The Dubert rule is, under this rule, judges can determine the relevance and reliability of testimony and therefore deem it admissible or inadmissible. In other words, you cannot sit there and make up this stuff by yourself. And just because so-and-so who looks smart and is talking smart, oh no, we're just gonna throw the law right out the window. Right. You can't do that. That's why I do not believe in espousing my opinion, and I will not do this for sensationalism.
Right. And that's an amazing thing. That's a great way to say it too, Russell. Because I love the way you say that the evidence will show you what you need to know. If you just know if you have to look and you have to be willing to see it, and you got to be willing to put all your personal opinions aside in that. And I think that's probably the hardest part of anyone's job that's in your field, is trying to not have your feelings enter the equation, or your beliefs.
If you go in there looking for the truth, you'll never find the evidence.
That's a great way to say it.
So the truth has nothing to do with this at all. That's why the truth never fares well in a court of law. You cannot go into a crime scene looking for the truth.
You have to go for the evidence.
You have to look for the evidence, and the evidence, if you allow it, will lead you, because the evidence has a story. And it will tell you, bones, a skeleton, everything has a story, and they will speak to you.
Right. And if they don't, and if they don't collect all the proper evidence, or they're not looking, like a lot of stuff I found in that case was not tested, or it was totally ignored, a lot of the stuff. And I mean, how can you get an accurate story? And if you're not looking at all the evidence, if you're only looking at selected evidence, you're not getting the full story. It can't be both ways.
You're going to believe what you want to believe. You're going to see what you want to see.
Right.
And so therefore you went in looking for a truth, or your truth.
But not the evidence truth.
Not the evidence.
Wow.
That's what makes truth bad, because the truth is not truth. The truth is solely dependent upon a person's perception on what they believe, or what truth means to them.
That's a great way to say it, Russell. That's amazing, and I really want to thank you. I'm going to give you the last minute. Is there anything that I'm going to give you the last couple minutes here of the show? Is there anything that you want to let people know? Any advice you want to give them if they want to get into the field that you are in? Anything like that? The floor is yours for 2 or 3 minutes. You just go ahead, whatever you want.
Okay. What I think first of all, anyone who wants to get into this line or this field, has got to stop watching a lot of that garbage that's on TV.
Okay.
It's great for educational purposes. If you're going to watch something, watch the first 5 seasons of Bones. After that, it's not worth anything. Stuff like that. Then you're going to, watch something like that. But CSI, please watch it for entertainment value only. And one of the biggest things you got to ask yourself in going to this field, first of all, you're not going to go into the field to make money, because you're not going to. Okay. You're not doing it for money. Okay. And then the big thing is you have got to ask yourself, how would you react? Your family has been waiting for years to go on a vacation. You can never turn off your phone. That's the big thing. Never turn off your phone. And as you're about ready to board the plane, you get a call, there's a mass casualty and they want you. Mm-hmm. So do you go with your family on vacation, or do you go look at a bunch of dead people and hope that you might make it to your family in time to enjoy some little bit of vacation? You have to ask yourself that, because I'm sorry, your family will not come first.
Right. And that's a big sacrifice. That's something you have to think about, and whether you're willing to do it.
So if you're in it for the glory, for the fame, for the sensationalism, I'm not saying not to be interested in it. What I am saying is that my colleagues and I would wish that you don't go in this field professionally.
Okay.
Please.
That's a great way to end it, Russell. That is great advice. And I want to let you know how much I appreciate you coming on the show and taking some time to educate us on this. And you're always welcome to come back in the new year if you want to come back and talk some more about this. I think it's a great, fascinating topic and a lot to learn from you. So you're always welcome to come back. You're always always, if you want to come back and discuss the more things, the door's open.
Yes, of course.
That would be great.
This is my favorite subject.
I can tell, and you come prepared, and it's amazing. So yes, you're definitely always welcome. And I want to wish you and your family, a Merry Christmas. Have a great Christmas, a safe Christmas, great New Year, and I will definitely keep in touch with you and get you back on the show in the new year to discuss this a bit more, because it's a fascinating topic.
Okay.
All right. Take care, Russell, and I'll talk to you shortly.
Sounds good. Okay. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there we have it. Oh, let me just go ahead and shrink my screen here, and I got to end my interview here. If I can get my mouse over here. There we go. And let me just go ahead and end that meeting. There we go. Perfect. And what a great interview. We had a little bit of glitches there. We cut out a couple times, but I was expecting that. I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but I knew it could, because he already warned me that sometimes his internet is a little up and down. And I was actually surprised that Russell actually came on camera. I didn't think that he was going to, I thought it was going to be, I was going to make an exception. I usually only interview people on camera, but I wanted to really speak with him about this topic. So I was going to make an exception. And if he was just going to be audio, that would have been fine with me. So, the fact that he actually got on camera with me and did this interview is, I can't thank him enough. It's amazing. And I learned so much just by this little discussion, and I can't wait to get him back on. I hope he will come back on. So, and I'll probably have another 100 questions for him now that I'm thinking about it. And I just wanted to, get him to explain the terminology and stuff like that for this interview. But he is definitely welcome to come back on, and I can't thank him enough for doing that. As I said, it's basically Christmas where he is. So, I mean, that's an amazing thing that he would take time out of his life to speak with us. And it's pretty cool. And I learned a lot. And I had to ask him about the Crowley case. I mean, I'm sure people, if I didn't ask them, they were going to ask me, why didn't you ask him? So I had to ask him at the very end. I didn't want to make the whole interview about that. It's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to actually dive into, the serial killer topic and what makes them tick and stuff like that. And so, but I figured at the very end I would slip in the Crowley thing just to get his opinion on it, and that's how I did first hear Russell speak. Was in another interview from another YouTuber, so I had to ask and get his opinion on that. So I'm glad I kind of slipped that in at the end, and I'm glad that his connection, he could actually get back on the interview. I was a little worried there, and I'm glad I didn't hang up. I was going to end the call, and just kind of wrap up the interview, but I'm glad I waited, and it happened a couple times. But hey, we got to the end here, folks, and a great interview, and I want to take the time to thank you all for taking the time to sit here and listen to me rant and babble on about things and listen to the interviews I do. I hope you're finding them is enjoyable and informative and informing, I guess I should say, whatever that word is. You're finding them that way, and that you're enjoying the interviews I'm doing. I got some great interviews coming up in the new year, and so I'm really looking forward to that. I got a few different things going on in the new year, which I will tell you about as it gets closer to the day that it's going to happen. But like I said, got some great interviews lined up with some great guests, and I just am having a great time doing this. I appreciate everyone who takes the time to check out these videos, and if you enjoy them, please give a thumbs up or a like, subscribe. I'm always told to say that, like I always tell you guys. So if you do, please do that, and that way, you can come back and enjoy all the interviews that I'm doing and the ones I got planned in the new year. So I just want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Stay safe, and I'll definitely be back with some more great interviews, and I will be talking to you very shortly. So just remember, everybody's got an interesting story. Everybody in this world, including you. Yes, you have an interesting story. And you know what makes it interesting to me is that's your unique story. And that is what I find it's what I find very cool about it, is it's your unique story, and nobody can tell it better than you. That's the way I see it, and that's what makes it very cool to me. That's the best way I can put it. That's what makes it very unique, is that it's your story. So if you want to get a hold of me, I'll just end really quickly here. Sorry I keep going on and on, but I want to remember to let people know, if you want to get a hold of me, maybe do an interview about a certain topic, then it's just simple. It's beenthinkingpodcast@gmail.com. Just shoot me an email. Let me know what you're thinking. And if it's a cool story, we're going to get you on the show. So take care. Have a great Christmas. Stay safe, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day, great night, wherever you are.